Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. Happy President's Day. Happy Family Day in Canada. We have an all-star cast, I guess you could say. Well, something. Russ, start us off with the pre-show.
I want to talk about the Daytona 500, even though I didn't watch it. And I'm not sure anybody on the panel watched it. But I think it's worthy of...
It's always a great lead-in, though. I want to talk about it, even though I didn't watch it.
Well, I'm going to tell you why. So we've often said, hey, we think people watch races a lot of times for the crashes. And the first crash they had was they had Pitbull apparently, do the opening for the race. That's one. But apparently yesterday was like a very crashy day, for lack of a better term, with bad weather. And a guy won who I think one person in the world had a bet on. He bet $100 on the guy and he won 10 grand. And it makes me wonder why you would even have that race in bad weather. Why not put it off another day? Like, that just seems like a sport you don't really want to do in inclement weather, and yet they did.
I mean, I'm sure there's also like a limited window, and you already got whatever scheduled race the following week. There's this. I know in racing it is a sort of a strict timeline with regards to when those teams go in with all their equipment, have to ship out, and head off to the next place for the next week's race.
But one crash involved 16 drivers.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
But it is a lot, I mean, we see it at all racing, though. I can tell you, Formula One, everything else we've seen, they race in inclement weather. It has to be extremely bad for them not to.
Isn't that bad enough?
This is the thing I don't get. From what I understand, the Daytona 500 is the opening race of the season. And it's the Super Bowl of NASCAR. So they open up with the biggest friggin' race. That's how jackass it is.
But again, 16 cars, like, that's a lot of cars, man. Like, that makes – and, of course, a guy won who you don't expect to win, because when 16 cars get taken out –
I'll give you a reason. I'll give Mike a reason why it's at the beginning. It's – depending on wrecks and things of that sort, it's the one time a year where I think they know they'll have all the racers that everybody roots for available to race, because as the season goes on, various things happen, penalties, crashes, things of that sort. So they know at the Daytona 500, especially with, all the sponsorships will be out there with all the big name racers.
Sure.
So that's the reason why it happens, I think, at the beginning of the year.
So, Russ, did Dick Trickle win?
It's not that, Mike.
I knew that was coming.
Robin's racing, Mike, okay? Robin's racing, okay?
Yeah, but I was trying to have a semi-serious conversation. I was trying to just have a semi-serious conversation, because we're not only in a pandemic, but when these 16 guys pile up, like, how safe is it for those 16 guys and all the pit and everybody else to be that close when you're trying to drag them out of cars? That's another thing you have to take into consideration.
They're all wearing helmets.
Suspend the season then, Ross.
I'm not saying to suspend the season, but if you're okay with 16-car crash, that's fine.
It happens in the sport.
No, it happened because of bad weather. That's
okay, and crashes happen also in not bad weather.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
Ask my niece.
Like, that's really it, right? Like, if you're a casual NASCAR fan, you got to live your dream yesterday. If you're a diehard guy, you didn't get much of anything, right?
Well, assuming you were turning in to watch the crash, that's the presumption.
I hate to say it, especially in the casuals, they're there to see. They're there to see wrecks. It's morbid, but they're there to hopefully either an exciting race and maybe see a wreck or two.
I mean, here's how much they delayed the race. They delayed Bob's Burgers. Big effing deal. Seriously, that's what they did. That's the TV. That was the big safety consideration there. All right, we're gonna delay this, so we'll push off Bob's Burger, but we're still gonna have this race on really wet ground. Okay, I'm good.
As Andy said, they race in Formula One in pouring rainstorms, so
that seems stupid too. Anyhow,
well, again, this is for you don't watch racing. I watch Formula One. I don't watch NASCAR as much, but they do it in those vehicles, which go ridiculous rates of speed.
I used to watch Indy racing when it was like AJ Foyt and Richard Petty and those guys, and if there was a drop of water on the track at the 500, they would shut it down. That's what I don't get.
Yeah, I guess if there's 16-car crash, it's a successful day. So,
yeehaw. Okay, go ahead, Ak.
All right.
This will be wonderful to see if we can actually do the roll call here.
Yeah, let's see what happens. I'm just gonna let you guys wing it. See what you guys do. All right, ready? Hello, Hockey World. It is Monday, February 15th, 2021.
I'm Michael Agello, and I had to beat off all my female admirers this weekend.
I'm Jan Levine, and I want to find out who they were to begin with.
This is Anthony Mingioni, and sometimes I wonder, what exactly goes through Michael's head before his.
Not much.
I'm Pete Tessier in very balmy Winnipeg.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com, now with twice the amount of guests. We come to you every Monday through Friday to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And today, I wanted to start with Marc-Andre Fleury, who I wrote about today, who is a definite interesting story developing here with Marc-Andre Fleury, because we all remember the story. Fleury, like I've said, he's basically the captain de facto of that team. And he's loved. There are very few players I've been covering teams like the Penguins adored, like literally adored Marc-Andre Fleury. Yeah. Like it's hard to imagine, it's hard to explain that. Like I don't remember many teams having such a deep admiration, and adoration for a player as the Penguins did.
Well, no, goalies, sure. I can name you a lot of teams actually for goalies.
Not to the level of Marc-Andre Fleury, because Marc-Andre Fleury.
Okay, Henrik Lundqvist. I mean, there's a
list. Because here's the thing, Lundqvist is a star. Fleury, when he was with Pittsburgh, was always kind of getting the short end of the stick. He was always getting the difference with Lundqvist was definitely he's the goalie, he's the starting goalie.
Well, we're talking about adoration. I thought,
Yeah, no, but adoration by the players. The players pulled for this guy. Like the players pulled for Marc-Andre Fleury, and they were there for Marc-Andre Fleury. And the same thing happened in Vegas when he gets to Vegas. I mean, in Vegas, he's obviously the starting goalie for a while, but then there he just, he takes over and takes that team and really is the reason that team is successful the first year, honestly. Mm-hmm. The reason they go to the Stanley Cup Finals. Then last year, they pick up Robin Lehner, the second coming Robin Lehner. They grab him. And
show your bias a bit more, please, with that comment.
No,
I like more in terms of how much you love Fleury. I don't think it's clear enough for the entire audience to recognize it.
This is really ironic, Jan, because I was not a Fleury fan for most of my life. But I'm just telling you that the fact that I'm defending him now is just because he's defendable right now. Like Lehner comes in and he's just and he comes in and he's given the starting job. He's a trade deadline acquisition, handed the job. And the team goes down in the playoffs. They have a good playoff run. Obviously, not Lehner's fault. I'm not going to sit there and blame Lehner for it. He has a good playoff run too. But this year and in the summer, they tried to trade him. They tried everything they possibly could to trade Marc-Andre Fleury. They did except for make a price that was reasonable. I mean, the price that they would throw out there was ridiculous, right?
Well,
but now Lehner's hurt. Fleury is the number one goalie in the NHL. Like he's got the best goals against and the best save percentage, more shutouts than any other goalie who's played 80 or more games. He's on fire. He's crazy, and Lehner's hurt. What are they going to do? Like, what's the end game here?
But first of all, the problem last year and problem in the offseason was never the quality of Marc-Andre Fleury as a goaltender. The problem was the $7 million albatross contract.
Right. That's the problem in the offseason. But last year in the playoffs, Mike, it had nothing to do with the contract.
Right, Lehner, okay.
I'm going to say if it was hard to trade him because of the contract, this and that. But yeah, that last year in the playoffs, it came down to who they thought the better goalie was.
Well, Fleury struggled with an injury problem late in the regular season. He did not have a good year. He tailed off during the regular season, and they went with Lehner and they went with the hot hand, and Lehner got them to the conference final. So do I think Fleury is still a good goaltender? If he was a $2 million goalie, he would have been traded in 2 seconds. But $7 million
all I can say is this. In the midst of a pandemic, when you can't trade Fleury with that contract, the end game is really easy. They have one of the best goalie tandems in hockey, and they're going to try and win the Stanley Cup with that goalie tandem.
Right.
But goalies don't usually work this way. And the interesting thing about Fleury is he has been part of that thing you're saying, the scenario you're saying there has been Marc-Andre Fleury's career.
No, but I think goalies work this way more than you think. Like Jacquemin and Villemure, they won co-Vezinas. I think it happens more than you think. It just doesn't get talked about.
The Islanders did it for years also early on in their time.
No, it did. I know, but I think you usually had Fleury would get the Penguins to the playoffs, and then Murray would win the Stanley.
who else did Pittsburgh have to put between the pipes when he was there? They had really nobody.
Yeah, eventually Matt Murray, who was
you could say that Fleury had a downturn in the middle in the middle of the last decade when he got out goaltended by Ilya Brizgalov in the playoffs. Okay, you can say
they just got outscored. No, neither goalie played well in that series.
Right, but
the Flyers just outscored the Penguins in that series. Yeah. That was not a goalie series for Brizgalov either. So
no. But I mean, I'm sorry. It's like he's a quality goaltender. He's got a great team in front of him. Leonard is hurt. He's playing well. He's putting up big stats. Kelly McCrimmon will have absolutely no problem trading him in the offseason. This year, during the season, $7 million, they can't retain salary.
No, I don't know if I would necessarily say completely no problem. I mean, he is a year older. Will it be less of a problem? I would say in that circumstance, yes, if he performs. But then at that point, it's like you're in a conundrum for the Golden Knights. Say they win the cup with Fleury,
right.
Then you try to ship off Leonard. I mean,
no. It hamstrung them this offseason because they had to move on from Nate Schmidt because they needed the room. But given the way Alec Martinez has played and given the way Zach Whitecloud has played, they really haven't missed him that much. And they have, as Russ said, the perfect situation now. Leonard goes out for 3 games. You pop him in the lineup, and he's won 3 in a row. That's a perfect. Look, it's not the ideal. But Fleury's enough of a professional that he's going to play well when they need him, and who knows what's going to happen.
Well, there might be a market for him right now. That's the
culture of Marc-Andre Fleury. They would get rid of the real one too if they could.
Peter, let me ask you this: with Edmonton opening up almost, I think it's $23 or $24 million in cap space next year, don't you think Ken Holland would bend over backwards to get Marc-Andre Fleury with 1 year left on his contract? I think especially with that Siv Koskinen in goal.
If they can get through the season running 1-2 with Fleury and Leonard in whatever capacity they need, you're only better when it comes to the playoffs.
Sure,
you're only in a better position. So why risk it? The Knights are in playoff or win now mode, right? So why do you upset the apple cart? You deal with this in the off season. Hopefully, some things navigate to a little more normal. They're losing exactly. Ken Holland would totally take that. I think. Jim Benning might take it right now, given
it
his
won't be
problem.
Jim Benning, no, Pete.
Well, yeah, it won't be Jim Benning.
There might be a team out there that really pushes for him right now, and that the reality is, and that's the interesting scenario they've got going because
it's not Toronto. I'll tell you that right now.
No, it's not Toronto. No, it's not. It would be Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh is
Freddie Anderson. Why would you even want to?
What about Nashville?
Let's not go down that road.
The issue remains with Pittsburgh, though, and I know everybody wants to say Pittsburgh. You have to, but you're going to figure this thing out from both ends because both the Penguins and the Knights. Again, Vegas is looking to move off from Fleury because of the contract.
Yeah,
right.
Pittsburgh's pretty darn close to the cap right now, so they're going to want Vegas to retain it. They have to figure out that conundrum. That's the issue there in terms of in order to make that happen. And does Fleury, for the issues that the Penguins have. I mean, he may cover for a little bit of some of the issues that they have defensively, but not enough to. I mean, he's going to be in a shooting gallery there. The way
I guess. What you have to think about with the Penguins is what route does Ron go now to address the problems? And obviously the argument in Pittsburgh is going to be, is it time to say it's over and get what we can for whatever we have and do it fresh? And if you believe in Ron's success that he had in Philly of changing things around, getting talent drafted and doing that, you have the 2 best assets to start doing that. And there are probably teams that would, you dangle the right carrot out in the right way, they're going to bite.
But let me just sorry, Michael.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. But that it's that you have to hope, because I don't think it's going to be a case where they're going to say, hey, we want to trade Sid or we want to trade Malkin. Right. That's the issue. They're going to have to come to Ron and say, "Listen, I'm willing to go to open that
would you trade Letang for Marc-Andre Fleury? Listen up for a second. Would you trade Letang for Marc-Andre Fleury? And no. I'm not saying directly. I'm not saying other things aren't involved. But the idea here, see, this is what's happening in Pittsburgh. They are. Pete, you say they have to decide whether they want to win now or not. The ownership
they're not winning now anymore.
So the ownership is saying, We are going to win now. That is what that's
but the hiring of Ron Hextall.
Then there
is the signal to me. Now again, they can couch that obviously with the fact that they have Burke there now to kind of bridge.
What you're gonna do. Yeah.
But when you're bringing in Ron Hextall, he still doesn't have what someone mentioned as proof of concept as a general manager for NHL level moves.
Well, first of all, if the Pittsburgh
Hextall doesn't.
If the Pittsburgh Penguins ownership is of the mind that they're still a contender, then they're as clueless as the Aquilinis were a few years ago.
When they said it on national TV, Mike, he did say.
I know. I'm just saying.
This is
the party line. Your new job.
This is the Burke game. This is what Burke does. This is his game. This is his.
Yes.
And that's what we had Brian Metzer on the post on the weekend, and
basically, it was a really good show.
I said to him, I says, Burke has never been brought into a scenario any place where it was like, let's stay with what we got. He's a guy who's got the balls to blow things up or to make the decisive move. He did it in Toronto with Kessel. He's done it before. He'll do it again.
He doesn't have the hand on the plunger. That's the only difference here.
No, I think he does.
He doesn't.
I think this is a 2-track system.
There's a reason they hired them both at the same time. And
exactly.
Two different people for what was held by a job was held by one person before they hired two different people for it.
Hextall is the development guy to rebuild the organization, to get talent in there, and Burke is there to do the heavy lifting.
And also help. And also
while Hextall rebuilds. That's basically what's happening.
But also at the same time, it's as I was mentioning to Pete, he isn't as a general manager a complete product. Ron, he did a great job of the scouting department and the building at the bottom. But in terms of the of making NHL moves, in terms of improving the team and moving them along, that was where he was great at moving some of the older players off. Yeah. But then in terms of the acquisition of the talent, I mean, he was in that certain. Okay. The organization wanted to move things along, and it wasn't quite there yet. So Ron, I think, has all the ingredients to be a great NHL general manager. But I do think getting Burke was kind of hedging their bets in that.
You know what? I'm a believer that when you bring in a GM and you then put them in as you assign a vice president of hockey operations to them, that you're making a mistake. It's too comprehensive. And I've always said this about the Jets have it with Cheveldayoff. They had it with Mike Gillis in Vancouver. It's all over the place, right? Yeah. My belief is, who is the guy the guy or woman, who cares who it is, who reports to the owner and says, this is a mess. Their loyalty is to the person who's got $500 million tied up in the team, not the GM. That there's got to be a separation of church and state there.
That is Burke.
And we also know with Pittsburgh, when COVID hit and everything came through in the summer, they were gutting everything on the underground of the organization. Scouts, assistant coaches, with all that. They need someone like Ron who understands that side of the game to rebuild it up.
Right. But I don't think,
Anthony, to your point, you bring in Ron for that. You let him get the tutelage of Burke, and maybe Ron's got a few strained relations out there in the thing.
That's the thing. That's the reason why in my opinion, that's why it's that way.
And you have
not that Burke doesn't also, by the way, though.
No, and you have to give. You have
different ones, which will help.
Yeah.
You have to give Hextall the tools to be able to do the job, and they only have, I think, 3 or 4. I think they have 3 draft picks in 2021. Yeah, so more than likely, they'll take this evaluation period and see where they're going. And if they're in 5th place in the East when April 12th comes around, you could see a massive dump of players by the Penguins to recoup draft picks, because
I think there will be. I think if they're not competing in a month and change, that will happen. But I also think if Brian Burke wants to trade Milan Lucic for Chris Letang, Hextall's not going to let him.
No.
That's Burke's not going to make trades.
Burke has that much power.
He doesn't have that much power, but he's got. There's a couple things that work here, right? And this is why they hired 2 people, and it was a smart move, for sure, because what you guys are all saying is correct. But Burke, I've talked to him about this at length before, and he's a big believer that there's only 2 ways to change a climate around a team, really change a climate, like to make things move forward when you're in a position like the Penguins are now, which is a good team but not a great team, a team that has the potential to compete but isn't competing. There's 2 things you can do. One, you can change your coach, you go out there and you just change your coach, which they don't want to do. They like Sullivan. He's their guy. The other is to change your goalie, which is like, and this is why I think that Burke's focus is so, and I keep hearing so many rumors about Marc-Andre Fleury that it's really being discussed. I don't have any.
I don't see why Vegas would be trading him this season.
Yeah, well, and the other one.
His value has never been higher, Russ. I mean, honestly, the people in Vegas I talked to, they're like,
they need him to win.
You got to remember that Vegas's opinion of Marc-Andre Fleury is very different than ours. I mean,
but I don't think it matters. They need him to win a cup because we all know Leonard will miss some games, and if he's missing games in the conference final, having Marc-Andre Fleury will get you to the Stanley Cup.
What if they get Jarry in the deal? What if they get Jarry in the deal? And they're like, okay, Jarry's a good enough back.
Every year, Leonard has been hurt. Every year in Buffalo, every year in Chicago. I think the only time he's ever been healthy completely was the years he was with the Islanders. That's it.
I mean, you're right. And in Vegas, they were brilliant in moving Nate Schmidt. Nate Schmidt was one of the most overrated defensemen in the league. We always felt that way. And he goes to Vancouver and has struggled mightily.
That team is not particularly good either. So I don't know if
but in that system, he's a guy who needs forwards or back check, and he needs all that. He's that kind of defenseman.
He's an offensive defenseman, yeah.
But Burke's job is he has been given a straight up, his MO this year is they look at the division. They look at the Flyers. The Flyers are they're pretty good, but they're not great. You look at the Bruins. The Bruins are pretty good, but not great. The Bruins might be great, but they're not really great. They look at the Capitals. The Capitals, they see the Penguins are still very much in it in their minds.
I think it's more likely if Burke gets a goaltender, it's Jonathan Quick more than it's Marc-Andre Fleury, because the Kings, they have a young goalie in Peterson, and I think they would like to unburden themselves of the last 2 years of Quick's contract.
They're not going to eat salary, Mike.
I would agree with you almost in every other scenario, except for the fact you have to remember that in that room right now are still Pittsburgh Penguins that worship Marc-Andre Fleury. And bringing him back into that team, what that would do as far as an emotional lift, they believe could maybe give them a Stanley Cup.
But
and if they
why would Vegas
they're going to go for it?
Why would Vegas eat salary to do it? They're not going to do it.
Because they tried, and it's been impossible. They've tried so many things. They tried, and yes, it's going to be easier if he plays better this year, and yes, it's going to be easier because he has 1 year less year on his contract. And I agree, he can be moved next year. But the other thing is, people don't trust McCrimmon at all. Like talking Brown, the way McCrimmon handled things last year with Fleury was really sideways. Ask Billy Guerin. Ask Don Waddell. And the way he handled things really makes them
ask Alan Walsh.
They don't want to. Not Walsh. No, that's not Walsh. That is not Walsh. That is
Walsh
straight up.
Started it with the meme. He did.
No, but that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about.
Walsh was reacting to the situation in his Walsh way.
No, but
this is in the off season. I'm talking about off season when he calls up and says, "Okay, this is what I need for Marc-Andre Fleury," and one of those teams that I just says, "Okay, we can do that. Just got to talk to my owner," and then he comes back the next day and says, "Well, you know what? This is what I need now for Marc-Andre Fleury." Well, wait a second. I can maybe do that, but I got to talk to my owner because you just told me this, and I got the owner thinking one thing. Now this, and then you're going to another team at the same time doing the same kind of stuff. That's the way McCrimmon was acting, and that's where people got pissed.
Let's assume that Fleury is going to Pittsburgh. Let's construct a deal, because I can't see them trading Letang, and I don't see Vegas wanting Letang. I really don't.
Gives them more salary to take on. They don't have the room.
It's another quarter.
Well, it has to be salary there has to be salary for salary in this thing. So that's the problem.
But that's the problem.
What gives them a chance?
When you got two teams that close, when you got two teams as close as Vegas is and as Pittsburgh is, it's going to get real. It's like you got to thread that thing perfectly.
You do, or you got to do what Rutherford always did, which is bring another team in, do that kind of. That's how Pittsburgh has made their moves historically. They used to use Vegas. Remember, I mean, that's how Reeves ends up in Vegas.
I was saying Marc-Andre Fleury and Ryan Reeves for what? Jason Zucker who's from Vegas,
and Letang.
No, that's too much. That's what I'm saying.
But why is Pittsburgh going to give up Letang if the goal is to win a cup? They have nobody on. Look, Pierre Lebedev has played nice, but they're not moving their number one defenseman, who's a minute muncher, and also the first line power play. Their defense. Matheson's fine. Ceci, Dumoulin. I mean, it's fine. They lose Letang. For all the gains they may get by getting Fleury, they're going to basically give it back by trading Letang. There's no point in it for them.
I'm with you. Then I wouldn't say they're fine. Fine is being very kind.
And by the way, the biggest problem is Pittsburgh is going to hang around in the race because you have to figure eventually Evgeny Malkin's going to figure it out. And after a rough start, they've gone up. The biggest problem is right now, I think we all think the Islanders is probably the class right now in the East. Boston is probably right behind them. So they're figuring in third place. You never know what happens in the playoffs. That's going to be the biggest issue. If they're in the race, they're going to have to make the decision, do I go for it? Or do I basically make trades and try to break it down? And that's going to be the hardest decision they have to make.
Money-wise, the only trade that really makes sense is Zucker and Dumoulin for Ryan Reeves and Fleury.
But why is Vegas going to do that?
Right. Like
I said before, Vegas, we value Fleury differently than they do, and what
they're not going to give him away. That's giving him away. There has
to be the goalie going back. By the way, so you're looking at Jarry's got to go back. Okay, so that's got to happen in the deal, Mike, because it's like they do need another goalie that they can trust, right? Because
they would lose. Wouldn't they lose into Seattle though, based upon the expansion draft?
Right. They have to protect Leonard.
Well, they're going to lose Fleury if they don't lose him. So it's like one of them.
Let's go back to Edmonton. I mean, what if you start thinking three-way trades and you bring Edmonton into the fold?
Yeah. No, right? I want to do one more thing with Pittsburgh, Pete, and then let's go down that path. Because the last thing I'll say about Pittsburgh is this. The one thing that Burke does probably more than other GMs in the league that people have to remember, Cat looks awesome, Russ. The one thing he does more than any other GM in the league is when Burke wants somebody specific. He wants Pronger. He wants the Sedin twins. When Burke wants someone specific, he gets it done. He finds a way to make that happen, no matter how crazy it is. And this is a guy that he specifically wants because he thinks this changes that locker room, and he thinks this changes their face, and he thinks so. That's why I think
try that. Look, they could probably trade.
This has to be taken incredibly seriously.
Do we know that's how he views Fleury?
Yes, I do.
But that's fine from the
that's from So this Fleury rumors have to be taken very seriously because of that. Mm-hmm. And that alone, and then to Pete, let's go to Edmonton route now.
I was just saying we know they need goaltending. We know they've got an issue. And what we've seen before is under McPhee and McCrimmon, Vegas has been able to do these three-way deals and will get creative to do things, and they've done it as preventative measures so other teams can't get the players that they think they need. So this year changes everything, right? Because the way the playoffs work, no one's crossing over.
Right.
So now you say you've got to get out of the Canadian division, you got to get out of the East, you got to get out of whatever the heck they're called. Stupid names. Anyways, you got to get out of those, and then you've got your final four. It's almost like college basketball, or it's almost like the Frozen Four, right? You've got to get out of these. And then, so you don't have to worry about beefing up Edmonton if you think you're going to face them, because chances are by the time, if you do, it's a totally different ball game anyways. So I think there's the ability to do some stuff like this, but I think also back to your point about Letang, is Burke saying we want Letang because he's part of the old school leadership group? And how much do you need of the old school? Because he is probably a very desirable asset with 1 year left next year at his age for a team that needs someone.
He's not the same Letang. I mean, I've watched.
No, he's still really good. He is. He's still really good.
I'm not saying I've heard Letang in the rumor. I'm just saying you got to make salary work. So like you have to be. It's not going to be Malkin. It's not going to be Malkin to Vegas for Marc-Andre Fleury.
And maybe it isn't, but I think there's variables in there. I think the other name that's going to be very interesting to see what Ken Holland does, and let's talk about Edmonton again, is he's got to deal with Nugent Hopkins.
Yeah. Big, and that is a big thing. Someone in the chat room says we should ask Jan because Jan is smart and we need to ask him once in a while what's going on. So Jan?
Jan has been able to talk anytime he wants.
Jan, I come to you. Jan is one of those, he does like throw beautiful tidbits in once in a while. Give us your thoughts on this whole scenario for a second.
I already gave you my thoughts about Pittsburgh and I mean, again,
okay,
look, Pittsburgh will want Fleury, and screw all of you. Pittsburgh will want Fleury.
Right.
Not you, Anthony. You're fine. Russ is fine. It's the guy in the middle box over there that's creating all the problems. You in the Bowery Boy hat. Yes, you. I was one of those who watched the Bowery Boys years ago. So
I watched them too.
Yeah. So look,
you guys don't remember me in the
Pittsburgh-
first couple
Pittsburgh-
seasons of being
Fleury may
Amish?
be a game
I
changer.
broke out of the Amish world. Come on.
Fleury may be a game changer in the room. It's the matter of finding that match, right? Pete is right. You could get a third team in the deal. We have to consider expansion. You have to consider crossing the border also, as you said, because you're going to sit out at least 2 weeks, and with the trade deadline and everything else, that gives you a lot of time to get acclimated. And if your team goes south in the 2 weeks while you're waiting, they may not make the playoffs at all.
Yeah.
Right. Here's the question, though. Edmonton would get in the conference room and say, if we get him, are we still getting out of this, whatever the stupid North Division is? And are we actually going to get out and make it to America one day to play in the rest of the playoffs? And the answer is no.
No, they're not even making the playoffs. I'm telling you this right now. They're not making the playoffs.
Vancouver and Ottawa are both not making
That's what it is.
Remember the movie? I'm like, this is perfect. Someone's got to use that.
So it's now 4 out of 5 who are making the playoffs.
Corey Feldman and Dream a Little Dream.
It's hard. It's a hard life it's a hard life in that Tim Hortons North Division, isn't it?
Yeah.
Pete.
Well, okay.
Yeah,
Well,
whatever they call it.
let's segue to that because first of all, Peter, Dubois is injured. It doesn't sound like it's serious, but you know they get him after stupidly having to wait 14 days when he could just test the guy over 7 days and get know that he doesn't have COVID. But they had to wait 2 weeks. He plays 2 games? Now he's hurt.
Yeah. Look, there is a lot of heat on Kevin Cheveldayoff right now.
Yeah.
And deservedly so. I don't think I've ever seen the fan base as vocal about problems that were preventable with a lot of things with the Jets as they are right now. There's a lot of heat here.
But is there heat from ownership? Because it's not going to matter from the fans there. The fans were mad last year. They didn't do anything.
Well, no, but I think it's here's the other thing. You know who True North lost? Is their biggest soothsayers when 1290 got axed here.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, right.
They lost a
losing
lot
PSN.
of media talent who played a calming measure, right or wrong, whoever you sat on the on the spectrum of the Jets or whatever team you're right. You lost an entity that tried to provide a level-headedness in terms of they had the personalities, they had the reach, and they had the clout with TSN backing them.
Yeah.
So they had a brand value and a certain thing, and that's gone now. There is a massive vacuum, and it's getting filled in the wrong way. There are people, I literally had to mute on Twitter the term Paul Maurice and Pomo because I couldn't stand reading the stuff coming up. Like I just had to get it out. And what ended up happening was everyone just started replying to me with this Paul Maurice gif of him waving on his day that he got his whatever one win or whatever. It's just
that's still not a guarantee to get a GM fired. It's not.
No, I don't think it's. They at least want a coach fired. And the narrative
I'm not sure
now.
getting that either.
But here's the narrative now. The narrative now in the void, because there's no one there to level this all, is you have all these other guys, free agents, speaking freely, going to podcasts, going to streams and stuff, saying, why is there such a reluctance in this market to make a change at the one thing that doesn't cost you against the cap?
You know what they need most? Pete Tessier. We need you back, Pete.
No.
We need that.
Peter, let me ask you this because I have noticed this. I mean, everything is beautiful right now in Toronto because they're leading the division and leading the league.
Yeah.
But, if they have a 3-game losing streak, people will be, having pitchforks and ready to lynch Kyle Dubas. In Vancouver, we've been hearing this for weeks, and Francisco Aquilini comes out with a 6-link tweet to basically say, screw you, everybody. I believe in Benning. I believe in Travis Green. Nothing's going to happen.
Write a blog.
Tell Aquilini to write a blog next time.
You know what? The last time he did that, Trevor Linden was in 2 weeks later.
Right.
Well, put it this way, Pete. We spoke about before the season start the issues with Maurice and why they won't get rid of him. Right. I think the bigger issue, Line was a lost cause, unfortunately. The bigger issue, I think, is seeing how Roslovic has played since he's gone to Columbus, moving on to a first-line center role, It clearly wasn't the money issue because he's only getting about $200K more than what they're offered. It's a role, right? And they were reluctant to move him up. If Maurice had slotted him into that second line and moved Stastny down originally, a whole lot of this would have been avoided. But this was a power play, and Maurice didn't want to necessarily budge off of where his position was, and that's why they ended up making the trade. And right now, look, I love Dubois, but I think we all were kind of shaking our heads going, wait, they gave up both guys to go get Dubois, even as good as he
we
might
thought
be as a young center.
was a bad throw-in because we knew he would do well, but the idea was
well,
give him a chance there, and I'm not sure it's all on the coach.
We had confidence that he was going with the opportunity that he would embrace, especially going home.
There was definitely a belief, and I think a well-founded one, that give Roslovic the right system.
Yes.
And the right environment, he's more than what he'd shown. He had a fairly good year. I think he had 17 goals last year. So he had a fairly good year last year.
He was like 12.
12, okay. But the point here is, like a lot of players, there's some players who are going to thrive under Maurice, and there's some who are going to thrive under Torts. Torts has to play because he's got nothing else.
Right.
So you can open it up and play. But the thing that comes with Torts and going in there is also, what Torts is. With Maurice, you've probably heard things, but he's a very good quote. He's good in front of the camera.
Mm-hmm.
But the word on Maurice, if you talk to people long enough, is he kills you by death by 1,000 cuts, and they're vicious, right? Torts just rips you a new one, and then he's hugging you 2 days later. Yeah. Like, it's a different approach.
But I think your ownership is afraid to lose him because you won't get a suitable replacement. I think that's a part of it.
Yes.
I think there are 32 jobs in the NHL to coach a team.
You keep saying that, but all 32
and I think there are a number of coaches you could go through to find the right one, and it wouldn't make your team any worse than what it is now. At the end of the day, the Jets' metrics have not improved in getting pucks on net and creating more scoring opportunities, and they have one of the deepest top 9 in the league. That's an indictment on the coach.
All right, there was a trade on the weekend, Mac, that you wrote about, and I wanted to take a different tack on it because, first of all, the trade it just again shows the cheapness of Thomas Dundon because they saved $800,000 on this deal and dumped Dzingel, who they signed on a 2-year deal. And then they basically made the deal to get Craig Paquette.
Right.
They waited,
which was a good thing, and
I think he's a perfect. I love Cedric Paquette playing on the fourth line of that Hurricanes team. I think he is. It's a very similar fit to obviously what he had in Tampa.
Good Hurricane team's a threat.
Good fourth line guy. I have no problem with him. Now Dzingel's got to wait 2 weeks to play in Ottawa. But here's the thing: Galchenyuk, he gets traded, he gets waived. They don't even put him. They put him with the Chicago Wolves, and I think it's probably because Charlotte or their minor league team, I think they opted out and they had to.
They're in Chicago. Yeah, they've been out. Right. Yeah, Charlotte's with Florida now.
But here's the thing, and we'll go back to that 2012 draft. Russ, was Alex Galchenyuk ruined by Montreal by being rushed and being forced to play a position that he wasn't meant to play, which was center?
That's a part of it.
Or was he just not as good as people thought? Because if you look at the top 5 in that draft, Ryan Murray's had injury problems. Yakupov's back in the KHL. Galchenyuk is an NHL failure. Griffin Reinhart is a never was. And the only one that's been good has been Morgan Rielly.
You get
that's a great top 5. It really is.
But you do get that on occasion. You get for the high end the players that you get in those spots. You do have years where things just kind of align that way.
In this decade, Anthony, that's the worst top 5.
Oh, no question. There's not even an argument. Gauchi, we all thought was going to be the better of the two. I think at the time, we thought maybe he was going to have a more well-rounded game than Yakupov did. But again, I think it's a combination of situation and the player too. We have to take that into account here as well. You have to take that into account that perhaps, you have to have coachability.
But I mean, Russ, you were at that draft. It's just puzzling how bad it's turned out for that top 5.
There were people that were higher on Galchenyuk than me, but at the time, he was a good skater. He definitely showed he could score. He was in the U.S. system. He had things going for him. But we also heard about off-ice stuff, Mike, that we don't really talk about. Yeah. And off-ice things will derail a career. And I think that's a big part of it too.
Right. That's true.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. I saw something kind of fun. If you guys want to go off topic a little bit here, because it's just the last couple of minutes here. I thought this was kind of an interesting thing, and we can get into. I mean, the standings and all that stuff are just so complicated right now, percentage wise, everything. I mean, there's 100 games tonight, but we can get into the COVID thing. But I saw this list that I thought was really fun, and we can either I'll tell you what it is, and we can decide whether you guys want to do it today or not. But it listed based on the playoff odds from the Sporting Odds website. It listed the top upsets in playoff rounds, since 1989.
Okay.
And this, it's just interesting so I wanted to see if you guys wanted to guess some of the biggest upsets, just to go through, and I can tell you where they land on the list. And one of the interesting things about this is there's one team on this list that in the top, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in the top 10, 7 of them are against them.
Well, Columbus.
One team's been upset 7 times.
The Columbus-Tampa Bay sweep has to be in the top 2 or 3.
It's not in the top 2 or 3. So the odds are, the winning odds for this. This is based on the winning odds in that playoff round. So if you bet it, okay, the winning odds for that playoff round going into that playoff round were 325 to 1 for Columbus. That's big, but the top teams are like 600 to 1.
LA Edmonton. Is it 80?
LA
When Gretzky first got there, they beat Edmonton.
Oh, right. That was a good one.
Miracle of Manchester.
Miracle of Manchester.
Right.
Are we going again? Let me just clarify this. Is this in the first round or any round?
Any round. The biggest playoff upsets.
Right, I'll give you mine. I'll give you mine. Islanders over the Penguins. Volek
Game 7 overtime.
Overtime. That to me was one of the biggest of that decade.
That's a great one. What year was that then? That was
93. I'm going to say, because that was after the Penguins already won back-to-back cups, and that third team probably had more talent on it than those other 2 teams, and then they lost in Game 7.
Right, they lost to the Habs in the conference final.
That is not on the list, believe it or not.
How about LA Kings 2012 beating Vancouver first round?
Oh, that's a good one too. Jeez, 2012 LA Kings over Vancouver. Nope.
Okay, let's stop this right now. That was
this list is already turning into
already.
From what year does this start? Now, what year does this start?
1989 is based on the
89. So I'm sorry, the Islanders that Islanders Penguins one has.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but this is based on the Vegas odds that went out at that time.
Why don't you read them off to me?
I'm going to give you the number 1, okay? Just
no. Go from 10 up. Go from 10 to 1.
Start from 10 to 1. Yeah, go 10 to 1. I want to hear this.
Tension.
All right, ready? Number 10. 2003, the Anaheim Ducks take out the Dallas Stars. Okay,
that's a biggie.
I can take that.
370 to 1.
That's Jaguar and that Babcock.
Yep.
They won the cup.
Yeah, I covered that cup. That was my first
Game
cup.
7 to the
right. The teams, I'm right.
Yeah, that was my first cup too, Russ. 2006, Edmonton over Detroit. That was 380 to 1, and that was when Edmonton takes out Detroit.
I don't believe that was 380 to 1. I don't. I question it.
Number 8, 1989.
Yeah, Wayne Gretzky had a bet on that one.
89. Chicago upsets Detroit, 400 to 1.
80.
I'm trying to remember that. I don't really remember that series.
Yeah, neither do I.
Chicago.
I think I might have been here where Detroit was. What year was this again? 89.
89.
I was starting to think of the Yzerman. I'm trying to think one of them.
That wasn't their great team yet.
Is the Sandus Ozolinsh San Jose beating Detroit?
Over Detroit.
Number 1, Mike. Number 1 on that one. Yeah. 600 to 1. The Sharks take out Detroit. That was very. Fine. That was very similar to Columbus.
That won fantasy football pool. Thank you, Sandus Ozolinsh.
Was that Herbe between the pipes or?
Yeah.
2003, the Minnesota Wild knock out the Colorado Avalanche. Remember that one?
Yeah,
that's a big deal.
That's a good one.
410 to 1.
Andy Fernandez and Dwayne Rollison in goal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. 2010,
the Montreal Canadiens knock out the Washington Capitals. Yep, that's a good one too.
Lock.
Yeah. What do you say the odds are on that though?
420 to 1.
Okay.
What year was this again? I'm sorry.
2010, Montreal.
This is the PK. This is the PK Subban led roster.
Yeah,
that's when they thought about trading Price.
Yeah, because Halak was on a tear, and then he got lit up in the conference final.
Yeah.
Montreal Pittsburgh was 335 to 1. That's like number 15. But Montreal Washington was 420. That was number 10. Number 7. I guess 7 more. Number 6. Number 6, in 2003, Anaheim takes out Detroit. This is the same year that Anaheim takes out Dallas, then Anaheim takes out Detroit. Actually, Anaheim takes out Detroit in round 1. Anaheim takes out Dallas in round 2.
Okay.
So Anaheim, that was 525 to 1. 2000.
Okay. Here's my argument on that one. In round 1, taking out Detroit should have been the steepest odds. Right. By round 2, we already knew Jaguar probably wasn't giving up a goal for a lot of the playoffs.
Right.
But that's what they're saying. They are saying round 1 was the steeper odds. So
okay.
Then the next one. We're at number 4. Sorry, they're not numbers. I'm trying to figure out what the number is, but we're now definitely number 4. Okay. Number 4, 2001. The LA Kings take out the Detroit Red Wings, 550 to 1.
I don't think that was 550 to 1.
2001. Is that Gretzky in LA? Is that where we are now?
No, Gretzky was already retired.
No, he was retired. He was retired.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry.
This is the beginning, sort of the. I'm trying to think. This is sort of a tweener LA roster. I don't know how many of the players that would be on that roster for when they would start winning their cups, but
yeah.
I was thinking Ziggy Palffy was probably on that roster there, probably.
Yeah.
And Josef Stumple.
Yeah, that's a good. 1990 for Flamester out there. Number 1. I'm sorry. This is number 3. The LA Kings take out the Calgary Flames in 1990. That's 600 to 1.
That Detroit, the last one before that one, the Detroit LA. What year was it again? 90?
2001.
2001. Okay. Detroit Wings 2001. That was Scotty Bowman as the head coach in Detroit.
Yeah.
With Manny Legacy and Osgood in goal.
And LA takes him out.
And I'm just looking.
I mean, Eck, I want to know.
Ashton was gone already. All those guys were gone. Well, I don't think Blake was already long gone also. I think he was in Colorado at that point. Then was he still there?
Colorado. No, these are Vegas odds. So Vegas odds are set based on who can bet on them too. So remember
who's the source of these odds? Like little Joey from Hoboken? Like I don't understand. None of this was legal.
Incarcerated Bob.
It's on the back of a pizza box.
I'm saying I'm not buying some of these odds.
If you bet, be able to collect.
Number two, the Minnesota Wild, 1991 takes out the Chicago Blackhawks. That was a 600 to 1 as well.
What year was that?
92.
91.
The Minnesota Wild didn't exist in 1991.
91. So that's Rennick was there.
Was that the Minnesota North Stars, right? Sorry, is that the Minnesota North Stars?
It wasn't the Wild.
I'm sorry, that's the Minnesota North Stars.
That was the year they were started playing.
They ended up going to San Jose and losing.
Right, that's the North Stars team to go to the finals. Right.
Yeah, at that point, Wes Wallace was in like midget hockey.
All right. So then number 1, San Jose, Detroit.
Okay, I have the 2001 LA Kings roster right now. Here you go. Aki Berg, Jason Blake, Rob Blake, Philly Boucher, Adam Deadmarsh.
He scored the big overtime
goal.
Deadmarsh scored the big goal.
Ziggy Palffy, Matthias Nordstrom. The goaltending was, let's see here. Who was it? Steve Passmore. No.
What a great name. Still one of my favorite names in hockey.
And Felix the Cat.
Felix the Cat.
That's
Felix Podman. That's right. Podman was on that roster.
All comes back to Toronto somehow.
All right, so now I'm going to do a couple now from the biggest
the center of the universe there.
The black hole, the hockey universe.
All right, now that's since 1989. That's hard for some people out there because we're old. We can do that. But the biggest upset since 2006. Now some of the top ones we have already, but Montreal, Washington is number 1 at 420. Edmonton, Detroit, number 2 at 380. Montreal, Pittsburgh, number 3 at 335. So and then Columbus, number 4 at 325.
How about Washington beating Boston 2012? The Joel Ward.
Yes, that's on here. That is number 18. Washington, that's 180, and that was in the first round of that series. And there's actually there's a Stanley Cup final on here, which is crazy. Which I didn't realize that this was a big upset, but Boston beating Vancouver.
Really?
Yeah, it was based on record.
Listed at 200 to 1. So now number 5, 2009, which is, I remember this one too. This is Anaheim beating St. Louis. Anaheim beating San Jose. And then after that, 2006, Buffalo beats Ottawa. Remember that one?
No. See, okay, that's horse. I call horseshit on that one.
Okay.
Because the Sabres, They were one of the best teams in the league that year. I mean, if had their entire defense not been decimated by injury against Carolina, they would have won the Stanley Cup. And
why were they 220 to 1 to win that?
Not somebody who was like, pumping up the Sabres. That Ottawa series was the one where Tim Connolly scored. I think in overtime in the game.
Right.
Ottawa folded up like a cheap suit.
I mean, Eck, I got a big one here. I don't know if it's on the list, but in 2004, Calgary beating San Jose was a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I remember. It's not on the list. 2004, Calgary beating Detroit in the second round was on the list. That was a
Kiprusoff in net then? Or
2004?
Yeah, it was.
Kiprusoff, yeah.
Yeah.
That's after Vernon, right? Yeah, that's Kiprusoff. Mm-hmm. I'm really old.
Look at this panel.
Yeah, I know. So then the 2020 Vegas,
you're almost as young as you feel.
Dallas, and Vegas beating Dallas in the third round. That's a big one.
Oh, that's a big deal.
Yeah,
I think that's true. And then so the interesting thing on here, and then 2012, the Flyers beating the Penguins in the first round. That was the Penguins were 190 odds. That's the crazy series.
Every game was a 7-goal game. Like
it was a wild series, and it was I think a little closer to talent wise.
Yeah. 2010, the Flyers beating New Jersey in the first round. That was a biggie because remember that Flyers team shouldn't have gotten in, but
right. No, that's a big deal.
Live.
I know.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me. I had
every time I talk about that, right next to me.
Shootout.
I know one team is not on this list because they haven't won a series since 2004.
Yeah, they're nowhere to be found. But what I thought was interesting now, just to kind of fill out this whole concept here, what I thought was really fascinating to me was the amount of times Detroit is on here being upset. Like, we think of Detroit on here as a bad team because they've been a bad team for a while, but not. I mean, they obviously were a really good team recently.
But that's the point that they were that good, and they had to build up to that point of when we finally got to the mid to late 90s.
They were going to trade Yzerman to Ottawa because they thought he was the center of being at the choke artists.
So Detroit goes out in the first round.
Shanahan. And then they added a bunch of other guys.
Right. It's hardly upset in the first round.
Robitaille ended up there. Hull ended up there. Hasek ended up there. They all ended up there.
That was after the initial couple of cups there, and then they started to be the stop that everybody wanted to go to. But the big change for them, in my opinion, was always combination. I mean, adding Fetisov, I think, helped stabilize their back line the previous season, and then they get upset. But then they go out and they obviously getting Larionov also, and then obviously again Shanahan gave them the big sandpaper guy up front there that they needed, high skill sandpaper guy up front in place of Keith Primo.
And they got Larry Murphy also, which helped them on the blue
Murphy
line.
was great. Yeah, they got these.
Thank you, Leafs.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember this because my dad, being a Red Wings fan, was always so pissed off about it all the time because he was like, when they finally got good, I remember the Yzerman drafts and how fired up he was about that because for years we sat there in the AM radio out on the porch getting Dave Strader from Detroit, listening to those games all the time in South Jersey. Detroit goes out in 94 in the first round to San Jose. They go out in 2001 in the first round to LA, 2003 in the first round to Anaheim,
93 in the first round to Toronto.
Yep, 89 in the first round to Chicago. It's just like it's amazing. I mean, they really just.
We have to mention that the Sabres are back in action for the first time in 2 weeks after 9 players being out with COVID. And I was on some of the conference calls, and it's like most of these players were ill for about 24 to 48 hours. A couple were asymptomatic. Kruger was sick for a little bit, but it wasn't like they were all sick for like 2 weeks. It was something that really spiked at one point, but they are. All of them, I think all of them were on the ice today, or most of them were on the ice today. 5 of them are in the lineup tonight against the Islanders. The interesting thing I saw, though, Eck, is they've rescheduled all the 6 games that have been postponed. Again, unless there's no way they're going to play 56 games.
Well, look at Colorado yesterday, right? The fact that they stuck with Vegas without Kel McCarr in the lineup also is pretty impressive after not having played for a week and a half. And now the Devils, who had 17 guys, I think, land on their COVID list, played for the first time, I think, 2 weeks tomorrow night against the Rangers.
Now, can I say, as a healthy byproduct of the way the schedule is this year, anybody who watched that Boston Rangers game on the weekend, that is the hockey that that was closer to the hockey that I grew up with than what we've been seeing the last few years. Brendan Lemieux and Trent Frederick beating the crap out of each other was a thing of beauty.
Sure. I'm going to give you the most fleeting stat of the day. This comes from CBC Nova Scotia, where Sidney Crosby passes Al McGuinness to become the NHL's top scorer from Nova Scotia.
There you go.
Did you know that, Pete? No, you didn't.
No, I didn't. But it's not. I'm surprised it took so long.
That's what I would say. I mean, if he hasn't already passed him,
McKinnis played how many years?
Like 18, something like that.
McGuinness had a hell of a career, guys. I mean, he was like
he's a Hall of Famer. I mean, obviously,
a hell of a player. But yeah, definitely. So tonight there's like 55 games on. So if you get a chance, I mean, really, pretty much everybody's playing tonight that's alive and not sick.
Well, Joe Thornton is back in the Toronto lineup, so that's one thing that we have to look forward to.
But we
have to ask the question. Since Anthony's on, I'm on, and you're on, Ek, we have to ask the question, since the Flyers aren't practicing today, they're practicing tomorrow, they're supposed to practice today, they're supposed to play on Saturday in Lake Tahoe. Are they really going to play Saturday in Lake Tahoe? Are they going to play Thursday?
I don't think they're going to.
They have to get at this point now, they have to get the practice in. I think once I see a practice occur, like tomorrow, then I think there's a chance, and they're going to go with what they have. But it's going to be tight. I mean, in my opinion, I think it's going to be real. Again, tomorrow I think is really, to me, tomorrow going into Wednesday is absolutely critical.
Who's going to be left on the Flyers? You won't have Konechny. You won't have Giroux.
Konechny's out. I mean, Sanheim is now off protocol, so Sanheim.
No, but Giroux's still on protocol.
Giroux still. Everybody, as of right now, you have 7 players on protocol for Philly. Konechny went on. Sanheim came off. But again, you also have Frost, and it was one of those players who's not really currently on that roster. But your Voracek is out. Voracek is still on.
Voracek, Konechny, and Giroux. That's
Giroux. Braun is out. Braun is also on that list. Scott Lawton and Oscar Lindblom.
This is not going to be a great roster if they play Thursday.
No, it's not. And that's what they're going to have to make that decision on.
You think it's more likely
question is when do they have to make that decision?
Yeah.
The Rangers are supposedly teed up to maybe replace them.
Or the
You're going to have
Penguins
to make that
possibly.
decision relatively soon.
Can we also say that looking at the waiver list this year is just what's the point? Because anybody Paul Byron is a good player. Maybe not having a good year right now, but he's a
useful player.
He's a useful player.
He was a good up until this year. He was scoring pretty well for them.
He's making $3.4 million. He's got a couple years left. So Montreal is not scared that he's going to get claimed.
No.
But
that's a byproduct of the salary cap not moving either, and all the other things. So it's not just taxi squad, it's not just roster size, it's everything, and it's probably going to be like that next year for part of it too.
But remember, taxi squad is only $1.075 million, so you're still on the hook for the difference in terms of how much you're going to clear.
And Byron can still skate. It's not like he can't play.
Yeah, if I was Ottawa, I'd be all over Byron. Actually, I'd be, that really would
Ottawa
be.
Can't take anymore. It doesn't matter. Ottawa's going to be in last with all these guys. It won't.
I know, but he's the kind of guy who is a good influence.
You won't recognize the Ottawa roster on April 13th because it'll be the Belleville Senators, because Derek Stepan and every other player who's an expiring contract will be moved out.
Well, Stepan better show something over the next couple of weeks for them to get something for him of any value.
By the way, I think the biggest shock to Twitter yesterday was when the Red Wings sent Danny DeKeyser down that he was still in the NHL. I think people forgot he was still in the NHL.
Wow.
There you go.
There were a lot of people that like Danny DeKeyser.
No, exactly. I agree. That's all the time we have for today, folks. Great job. Thank you. Thanks for the giant panel. We appreciate it. It's always good to see all you guys. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We